Jake Martinez felt his ship shake as another blast hit the hull. Red warning lights flashed all around him in the small cockpit. The control panel showed damage to the engines and life support systems. He was in serious trouble. Warning. Hull. Breach detected. Emergency landing required. The computer's voice said in its calm, cold tone. Jake gripped the controls tighter and looked out at the planet below. It was mostly red rock and dust with no signs of life. Not the worst place to crash, but not the best either. Behind him, he could see the alien ship still following. They had been chasing him for 3 days through space. The whole mess started when Jake picked up their secret message while on patrol. The aliens were planning to attack human colonies near Earth. Jake tried to report it back to headquarters, but the aliens found him first. Now they wanted him dead before he could warn anyone. His ship shook again as the atmosphere grabbed it. The planet's gravity pulled him down fast. Jake fought to keep the nose up, but the damaged engines were not giving him much power. He aimed for a flat area between some tall rocks. The landing was rough. Very rough. Jake's head snapped forward as the ship hit the ground and bounced twice before sliding to a stop. Smoke filled the cockpit. He could hear metal creaking and sparks flying from broken wires. Jake unstrapped himself and grabbed his gear. His plasma rifle was still working. He had 4 power cells for it, which meant about 200 shots if he was careful. 2 small grenades hung from his belt along with his grandfather's old combat knife. The knife had been with his family through many Earth wars before humans ever left the planet. He put on his combat armor and checked the seals. The suit would give him air for maybe 6 hours if the planet's atmosphere was bad. The scanner on his wrist showed the air was thin but breathable. That was one piece of good news. Jake stepped out of his broken ship and looked around. Red dust covered everything. Strange rock formations stuck up from the ground like giant fingers. The sky was the color of dried blood with 2 small suns hanging in it. No plants or animals anywhere that he could see, but he was not alone. His scanner showed energy signatures all around him. The aliens had landed and were moving into position. Jake counted the signals. 50. No, wait. More were showing up. 70. 80. 100. 100 alien warriors against 1 human. Jake almost laughed. The aliens thought they were being smart. They had chased him to this empty planet where no one could help him. They probably thought he would just give up and surrender. They did not know Jake Martinez very well. Jake had grown up on Mars Colony, where life was hard and people had to be tough to survive. His father was a miner who worked 16-hour days in the deep tunnels. His mother ran the colony's medical center and saved lives every day. They taught Jake that giving up was not an option. Later, Jake joined the Space Marines and went to the best military school humans had. The Terran Defense Academy was where they trained the toughest fighters in known space. Jake learned how to fight in every environment, against every kind of enemy. He learned that humans had something most aliens did not understand. Humans never quit. The Academy taught him about the different alien species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians were like giant insects that hunted in groups. They were fast and smart but followed patterns. The Vorthak looked like walking tanks with thick armor, but they were slow to change plans. The floating ethereals were made of gas and energy, hard to kill but easy to confuse. There were others too. Crystal beings that talked through sound. Reptile creatures that could see heat. Plant-like aliens that moved by growing and shrinking. All of them were dangerous in their own way. But they all had one thing in common. They had never fought a human who had nothing left to lose. Jake checked his weapons one more time. The plasma rifle felt good in his hands. The grenades were armed and ready. His grandfather's knife was sharp enough to cut through most alien armor if he got close enough. He looked at his scanner again. The aliens were moving closer but staying in a big circle around his crash site. They were being careful, probably, planning some kind of coordinated attack. That was good. It meant they were scared of him. They should be. Jake had read the files on every major battle between humans and aliens in the past 50 years. Humans almost always won, even when outnumbered. It was not because human weapons were better, though they were pretty good. It was not because human ships were faster, though they were fast enough. Humans won because they thought differently than other species. Most aliens evolved on worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. They worked together, followed leaders, and stuck to plans. When things went wrong, they tried to fix the plan or make a new one. Humans evolved differently. They came from a world where everything tried to kill them. Big predators, small diseases, bad weather, other humans. Earth was not a kind planet. To survive there, humans had to be adaptable, creative, and just a little bit crazy. When things went wrong for humans, they did not try to fix the plan. They threw out the plan and made up new rules. Jake smiled as he thought about what his instructors used to say. The enemy cannot predict your moves if you do not know what you are going to do next. The aliens out there were probably making detailed battle plans right now. They were assigning roles and coordinating movements. They were trying to think of every possible thing Jake might do so they could counter it. But Jake was not planning anything. He was just going to react and adapt and cause as much chaos as possible. That was the human way. A sound caught his attention. Something was moving between the rocks to his left. Jake dropped down behind a piece of his broken ship and watched. A few seconds later, he saw it. A Zephyrian scout moving carefully from rock to rock, trying to get closer without being seen. The alien was good at hiding, but not good enough. Jake could see the small distortions in the air where its cloaking device was not quite perfect. He raised his rifle and aimed carefully. The shot took the alien's head clean off. The body fell backward and did not move. Jake was already moving before the body hit the ground. He knew the other aliens would have heard the shot and would be coming to investigate. He needed to be somewhere else when they arrived. He ran low between the rocks, using the broken ground for cover. His armor's systems showed him the best path to avoid being seen. Humans had always been good at moving quietly when they needed to. Behind him, he could hear alien voices calling to each other in their strange languages. They had found their dead friend and were probably very upset about it. Jake hoped they were upset. Upset enemies made mistakes. He found a good hiding spot on top of a tall rock formation and looked down at the crash site. Aliens were swarming all over it now, looking for him. They moved in careful formations, covering each other and checking every shadow, but they were looking in the wrong place. Jake was above them now, and they were not thinking to look up. Most alien species did not climb very well. Humans, on the other hand, had been climbing trees and cliffs for millions of years. Jake counted the aliens below him. About 20 had come to investigate the shot. That left 80 still in the outer circle. Good odds for what he was planning next. He pulled out one of his grenades and smiled. Time to really get their attention. The grenade exploded with a bright flash and a loud boom. 3 aliens were caught in the blast and thrown to the ground. The others scattered, looking for cover and trying to figure out where the attack came from. Jake was already moving again. He slid down the backside of the rock and ran toward a different position. The aliens would search the area where the grenade came from, but he would not be there anymore. As he ran, Jake thought about what he knew about alien psychology. Most species in the galaxy were pack hunters or herd animals. They felt safe in groups and got nervous when separated. Humans were different. Humans could work alone for long periods without going crazy. That was going to be his biggest advantage. Commander Kethvar of the Zephyrian forces stood over the bodies of his 3 dead soldiers. His mandibles clicked together in anger. The human was supposed to be trapped and helpless. Instead, it was fighting back and killing his warriors. "Report," he commanded into his communication device. The human used an explosive device from an elevated position, came the reply from his scout leader. "We have searched the area, but found no trace of the target." Kethavar's compound eyes reflected the red light of the planet's twin suns. Had fought many battles across the galaxy, but humans were always the most difficult opponents. They did not fight like civilized beings. They fought like wild animals, but with advanced technology and tactical training. "Form defensive positions around the crash site," he ordered. "The human will try to retrieve supplies from its vessel. We will wait for it to come to us." But Jake had no intention of going back to his ship. He had everything he needed with him, and returning to the crash site would be exactly what the aliens expected. Instead, he was hunting. Jake found his next target 20 minutes later. A lone Vorthak warrior was standing guard at the edge of the alien perimeter. The creature was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like thick metal plates. It carried a heavy plasma cannon that could probably blow a hole through a building, but the Vorthak was standing in the same spot for too long. It was not moving or scanning the area. That made it predictable, and predictable enemies were dead enemies. Jake studied the alien's armor, looking for weak spots. The plates covered most of its body, but there were gaps at the joints where softer tissue showed. The neck was especially vulnerable, with only a thin membrane protecting the major blood vessels. Jake circled around behind the creature, moving slowly and carefully. His combat training had taught him how to walk without making noise, how to control his breathing, and how to time his movements with natural sounds like wind or distant explosions. The Vorthak never saw him coming. Jake's grandfather's knife slid between 2 armor plates at the base of the alien's skull. The blade found the creature's spinal cord and severed it cleanly. The Vorthak dropped its weapon and fell forward without making a sound. Jake quickly grabbed the plasma cannon. It was heavy, designed for a creature much stronger than a human, but he could still use it. The power cell showed a full charge. Jake smiled and checked the weapon's settings. Maximum power, wide beam spread. Perfect for what he had in mind. He dragged the Vorthak's body behind some rocks where it would not be found quickly. Then he moved to his next hunting ground. The aliens were starting to get nervous. Jake could hear it in their radio communications, which he was monitoring with equipment taken from his first kill. They were using different languages, but the tone was the same in all of them. Fear. Patrol 7, report your status, came a transmission in the clicking language of the Zephyrians. No, answer. Patrol 7 respond immediately. Still no answer, because Patrol 7 was the Vorthak Jake had just killed. Jake found a good position on a ridge overlooking the alien camp. Through his rifle scope, he could see them moving around nervously. Some were looking outward for threats. Others were looking inward at their own companions, probably wondering who would be next. That was exactly what Jake wanted. Paranoid enemies made mistakes. He set up the heavy Vorthak plasma cannon on a stable rock and aimed it at the largest group of aliens. There were about 15 of them clustered around what looked like a communication setup. Jake adjusted the weapon settings for maximum damage. The plasma beam lit up the canyon like artificial lightning. It struck the alien communication post and vaporized it instantly. The aliens standing nearby were caught in the energy burst and died before they could scream. Jake was running again before the light faded. He left the heavy weapon behind because it would slow him down. Speed and mobility were more important than firepower when you were outnumbered. Behind him, he could hear alien voices shouting in panic. They were trying to coordinate a response, but without their main communication system, it was much harder. Jake had just cut off their ability to work together effectively. Commander Kethvar stared at the smoking crater where his communication post used to be. 15 more of his warriors were dead, including his chief signals officer. The human had somehow acquired a Vorthak heavy weapon and used it with devastating effect. "How is this possible?" demanded Subcommander Thekarai, a younger Zephyrian whose voice shook with fear. "One human cannot be in multiple places at once." "It is not in multiple places," Kethvar replied grimly. "It is simply moving faster than we can track. The human is using hit-and-run tactics, striking where we are weakest and then disappearing. Then, we should group all our forces together," Thekarai suggested. "If we stay in one large formation, the human cannot pick us off individually." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter if Zephyrians could laugh. "That is exactly what the human wants us to do. Humans are experts at fighting grouped enemies. They have weapons designed specifically for that purpose." If to prove his point, another explosion echoed across the canyon. More of his warriors were dead. Jake had found a group of crystal folk trying to set up a replacement communication array. The crystalline beings were beautiful to look at, like living gemstones that rang like bells when they moved. But they were also extremely fragile. A single fragmentation grenade had shattered all 6 of them into glittering dust. Jake retrieved some of their communication equipment before it was completely destroyed. The crystal folk used harmonic frequencies to talk to each other, and their devices could tap into almost any alien communication system. Now Jake could hear everything the aliens were saying to each other. The human has taken our crystal communicators. He heard one alien report. It may be listening to our transmissions. Then we will use hand signals only, came the reply from what sounded like Commander Keithavar. All units form defensive positions. No one moves alone. No one breaks formation. Jake smiled as he listened. The aliens were doing exactly what he wanted them to do. They were bunching up, becoming predictable and limiting their own mobility. In their minds, they were being smart and careful. In reality, they were making themselves perfect targets. Jake looked at his remaining equipment. One grenade left, about half power remaining in his rifle, and various alien weapons he had collected. Not much for fighting 90 aliens, but it would have to do. He found a narrow canyon that the aliens would have to pass through to reach his original crash site. The walls were high and steep, with loose rocks that could be brought down with the right amount of force. Jake spent the next hour setting up his trap. He placed explosive charges made from alien power cells at key points along the canyon walls. He positioned himself on the high ground where he could see the entire killing zone. Then he activated his emergency beacon. The signal would draw the aliens to his location like moths to a flame. They would think he was calling for rescue, that he was finally desperate enough to risk giving away his position. They would come through the canyon in force, trying to capture him before help could arrive. They would learn too late that no help was coming. Jake had set the beacon to broadcast on a frequency that no human ship would recognize. The signal was bait, nothing more, and the aliens were about to take it. The emergency beacon worked perfectly. Jake watched through his rifle scope as the aliens began moving toward his position. They were being careful, staying in formation and covering each other as they advanced, but they were still coming through the canyon just like he planned. Commander Keithavar led the main force himself. Jake could see the big Zephyrian's distinctive armor through his scope. The alien commander was smart enough to send scouts ahead, but not smart enough to find a different route. Jake counted the aliens as they entered the narrow canyon. 30, 40, 50. More were coming behind them. Most of the remaining alien force was squeezing into his killing zone. Perfect. Jake waited until 70 aliens were in the canyon before he triggered the first charge. The explosion brought down tons of rock from the canyon wall, crushing a dozen aliens and blocking the exit. The aliens at the rear of the formation were cut off from the main group. The second explosion sealed the other end of the canyon. Now, the aliens were trapped between walls of fallen stone with nowhere to run. Panic spread through the alien ranks like fire. Some tried to climb the steep canyon walls, but the loose rock gave way under their weight. Others fired their weapons at the stone barriers, but even their most powerful guns could not clear a path quickly. Jake stood up on his ridge and looked down at the trapped aliens. He raised the Zephyrian plasma rifle he had taken from his first kill and began picking off targets. The aliens fired back, but they were shooting upward at a target they could barely see. Jake was firing down at enemies packed together in a narrow space. Every shot found its mark. Commander Keithavar pressed himself against the canyon wall as plasma bolts rained down from above. His compound eyes counted the bodies of his fallen warriors. 20 dead in the rock slides. 10 more killed by the humans' rifle fire. "Return fire," he commanded. "Concentrate on the ridge line." His warriors obeyed, filling the air with energy beams and projectile weapons. But the human had positioned himself well. Most of their shots hit solid rock or empty air. Keithavar realized with growing horror that the human had planned this entire battle. The emergency beacon, the canyon route, even the timing of the rock slides. Everything had been calculated to achieve maximum damage to his forces. The human was not just a warrior. It was a strategist. Jake reloaded his rifle with a fresh power cell. He had used up most of his stolen ammunition, but it did not matter. The aliens were trapped and running out of options. Some of them were trying to surrender, throwing down their weapons and calling out in their various languages. Jake ignored the surrender attempts. These aliens had been hunting him for 3 days with orders to kill him. They had chased him across space and tried to murder him on this empty planet. Now they wanted mercy because their trap had failed. Humans did not forget that easily. Jake switched to a captured ethereal weapon that fired bolts of pure energy. The floating gas creatures had some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their weapons could punch through almost any armor. He aimed at a group of Vorthak warriors who were trying to organize a counterattack. The energy bolts passed through their thick armor like it was paper. The heavily armored aliens fell one by one. From his position, Jake could see the entire battlefield. The aliens were no longer fighting as a coordinated unit. They were just individuals trying to survive. Some huddled behind whatever cover they could find. Others ran around randomly, looking for an escape route that did not exist. Fear had broken their military discipline. They were no longer an army. They were just scared creatures waiting to die. Jake felt no satisfaction in the slaughter. He took no pleasure in killing. But these aliens had made their choice when they decided to hunt him. This was war, and in war the enemy did not get to choose how it ended. A movement caught his eye. One of the crystal folk was trying to use its harmonic abilities to shatter the rock barrier. The crystalline being was singing in frequencies that made the stones vibrate and crack. Jake put a rifle shot through its center mass. The crystal folk exploded into sparkling fragments that scattered across the canyon floor. The remaining aliens saw their last hope die with the crystal creature. Some of them began making keening sounds that might have been prayers or death songs. Others sat down and waited for the end. But Commander Kethvar was not ready to give up. The veteran Zephyrian warrior still had fight left in him. Kethvar gathered the surviving members of his command staff around him. There were only 8 of them left out of the 100 warriors who had started this hunt. The human cannot stay up there forever, he told them. It will run out of ammunition or power eventually. When it does, we attack. Commander, one of his officers said quietly, perhaps we should try to negotiate. The human has proven its point. Maybe it will let us leave if we promise not to pursue it further. Kethvar's mandibles snapped together angrily. Negotiate with a human? They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They kill until nothing is left that can threaten them. He was right about that. Jake had no intention of letting any of the aliens escape. They would only return with reinforcements or report his location to their fleet. The only way to keep Earth's colonies safe was to make sure no one left this planet alive. Jake checked his remaining supplies. 2 power cells for his rifle. A few charges left in the ethereal weapon. His grandfather's knife was still sharp. It would have to be enough. He began climbing down into the canyon. The aliens saw him coming and opened fire with everything they had left. Plasma beams and projectile rounds filled the air around Jake as he moved from rock to rock, always staying. Behind cover, Jake had learned urban combat in the ruins of old Detroit during his military training. Moving through broken terrain under fire was something he had practiced thousands of times. The aliens were good shots, but they were shooting at targets they could barely see for fractions of a second. Jake reached the canyon floor and took cover, behind a fallen boulder. He could hear the aliens talking to each other in their various languages. They were trying to coordinate their movements, but without their communication equipment, it was difficult. Jake pulled out his last grenade and armed it. He had been saving this one for the right moment. Now seemed like a good time. He threw the grenade into the center of the alien formation and counted the seconds. The explosion echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. When the smoke cleared, 6 more aliens were dead. That left fewer than 30. Jake charged into the remaining group with his rifle firing on full automatic. The aliens were brave fighters, but they had been through too much. Their morale was broken and their formation was scattered. Jake moved through them like a force of nature, shooting some and stabbing others with his grandfather's knife. The blade had tasted alien blood before in wars on distant worlds. Now it was drinking deeply again. Commander Kethvar found himself face to face with the human at last. Jake Martinez stood before him covered in dust and alien blood, his eyes cold and focused. The Zephyrian commander raised his weapon, but the human was faster. Jake's knife took Kethvar in the throat, sliding between the chitinous plates of his neck armor. The alien commander fell backward, his compound eyes reflecting the red sky one last time. Jake stood in the center of the canyon surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. The hunt was over. 100 alien warriors had come to this planet to kill him. None of them would be going home. Jake stood in the silent canyon surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. The red dust was dark with alien blood. The air smelled of burned metal and death. 100 of the galaxy's most dangerous warriors lay dead around him. But Jake felt no victory, only emptiness. He walked among the bodies, checking each one to make sure they were really dead. Some alien species could survive wounds that would kill a human. Others could fake death and wait for a chance to strike back. Jake had learned not to take chances. His grandfather's knife was sticky with alien blood. Jake cleaned it carefully, on a piece of cloth torn from his uniform. The old blade had served him well, just like it had served his grandfather in the Earth Wars many years ago. Jake thought about his grandfather then. The old man had fought in 3 different wars before humans ever left Earth. He used to tell stories about battles in places with names like Vietnam and Afghanistan and Syria, places where humans fought other humans over things that seemed important at the time. War never changes, boy, his grandfather used to say. Only the weapons get better and the enemies get stranger. The old man was right. Jake was fighting aliens on a planet far from Earth, but the basic rules were the same. Kill or be killed. Survive or die. Protect what matters most. Jake picked up weapons and equipment from the dead aliens. Most of their technology was too advanced for him to understand, but some things were simple enough. Energy cells for power. Food rations that humans could eat. Medical supplies that might work on human biology. He found something interesting in Commander Kethavar's equipment pack. A small device that looked like a communication unit, but more advanced than anything the other aliens had carried. Jake turned it on and listened. Static filled the air for a moment, then cleared. Voices speaking in alien languages came through the device. Jake recognized some of the words from his intelligence training. They were talking about the battle, about the loss of Kethavar's strike force. No response from Unit 7, one voice said in the clicking speech of the Zephyrians. They were due to report 3 hours ago. Perhaps they are still hunting the human, another voice replied. Kethavar is thorough in his work. Jake smiled grimly. If only they knew how thorough Kethavar had been. Thorough enough to get his entire force killed by one human with a knife and a rifle. Jake listened to more of the alien communications. There were other ships in the system, waiting for Kethavar to report success. When he did not report, they would come looking for him. Jake counted at least 6 different alien voices on the communication channel. 6 ships, probably with full crews. That could mean anywhere from 50 to 300 more aliens heading his way. The battle was not over. It was just beginning. Jake looked around the canyon one more time. He had won this fight, but he could not win the same way again. The aliens would be ready for traps now. They would be more careful, more coordinated, and there were too many of them for him to fight in open battle. He needed a new strategy. Jake climbed out of the canyon and returned to his crashed ship. The vessel was badly damaged, but some systems were still working. The computer was functional, and more importantly, the fabrication unit was still online. The fabrication unit was standard equipment on all human scout ships. It could take raw materials and turn them into basic tools, weapons, or equipment. Jake had an idea for how to use it. He spent the next 2 hours stripping useful materials from the alien weapons and equipment. Power cells, metal alloys, electronic components. The fabrication unit analyzed each item and added it to its material database. Then Jake began building. First, he made more ammunition for his rifle. The fabrication unit could not make the complex power cells that the weapon normally used, but it could make simpler chemical explosive rounds. They would not be as powerful as plasma bolts, but they would kill aliens just fine. Next, he made explosives. Lots of explosives. The alien power cells contained enough energy to level a building, if they were modified correctly. Jake had learned demolitions in the military, and the fabrication unit had the tools he needed. Finally, he made something special, a small device that would broadcast false signals on alien communication frequencies. Jake programmed it with recordings, of alien voices he had captured during the battle. It would make the incoming aliens think their friends were still alive and fighting. While Jake worked, he listened to the alien communications. The ships were getting closer. They would arrive within a few hours, probably after the planet's twin. Sun set and darkness fell. That was fine with Jake. Humans could fight in the dark better than most alien species. His armor had night vision and heat sensors. The aliens would be flying blind. Jake finished his preparations and moved to a new position several miles from the canyon. He found a series of caves in a rocky hill that would give him good cover, and multiple escape routes. He set up his equipment and waited. The alien ships arrived just after sunset. Jake counted their engine signatures on his scanner. 7 ships, not 6 like he had heard on the radio. The aliens were taking this seriously. The ships landed near the canyon where Jake had fought the first battle. Jake watched through his scope as alien warriors poured out of the landing craft. They moved carefully, weapons ready, expecting an ambush. Jake activated his false signal device. The small broadcaster began transmitting on alien frequencies, playing recordings of Kethvar's voice giving orders and reporting on the battle. Unit 7 to Fleet Command. The device broadcast in perfect Zephyrian. Human target is contained. Proceeding with capture operation. The aliens below stopped moving and listened to the transmission. Jake could see their confusion even from a distance. They were hearing their dead commander's voice giving them orders. Some of the aliens began moving toward Jake's old position, following the false signals. Others stayed with the ships, unsure what to believe. The confusion was exactly what Jake wanted. Jake began his new campaign of terror. The first alien died without knowing what hit him. Jake's rifle shot took the creature's head off from over half a mile away. The body fell silently in the red dust. The second and third aliens died before their friends could react. Jake was using the chemical explosive rounds now, and they made much less noise than plasma bolts. Perfect for stealth killing. By the time the aliens realized they were under attack again, Jake had killed 8 of them and disappeared into the night. The alien commander of the rescue fleet was a Vorthak named Groktar. He was older and more experienced than Kethvar had been, and he quickly realized what was happening. The human is still alive, and he announced to his troops. Kethvar's entire force has been eliminated. We are listening to recorded transmissions. The aliens formed defensive positions around their ships, but Jake was already moving. He had planted explosives along the routes the aliens would use to search for him. Every path they took would lead them into another trap. The first explosion killed 4 aliens who were investigating the false signal source. The second took out a patrol that was moving too predictably. The third destroyed an alien communication post, cutting off their ability to coordinate with their ships. Jake was fighting a new kind of battle now. Not the desperate last stand in the canyon, but a calculated campaign of psychological warfare. Every death, every explosion, every moment of fear was designed to break down alien morale and discipline. The aliens were learning what humans had always known. Fear was a weapon more powerful than any gun, and Jake Martinez was very good at using fear. The alien reinforcements were dying one by one, and they knew it. Commander Groktar stood in the command center of his ship, staring at the tactical display. 23 of his warriors were dead. The human had been picking them off for 6 hours, striking without warning and vanishing like a ghost. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have lost contact with patrol groups 4 and 7. Their last known positions are marked, but they are dead." Groktar finished, like all the others. The Vorthak commander's thick armor plates shifted as he moved. He had fought in dozens of battles across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for this. One human warrior was destroying his entire force using tactics that seemed impossible. "How can one creature be so effective?" asked his second in command. "Our sensors show only one life sign out there, but the attacks come from multiple directions." Groktar's small eyes focused on the tactical map. Red dots marked where his soldiers had died. The pattern made no sense. The human appeared to be in 6 different places at once, striking north and south simultaneously. But Groktar was an experienced military officer. He knew the truth was simpler and more terrifying than his subordinates realized. The human was not in multiple places. It was just moving faster than they could track. Jake crouched in a cave 3 miles from the alien landing site, checking his equipment. The explosive rounds were working well, but he was running low on materials. The fabrication unit could only do so much with the resources available. He had been awake for 36 hours straight, but adrenaline and combat drugs kept him alert. Sleep was a luxury he could not afford. Not while alien warriors were hunting him across the planet. Jake looked at the captured alien communication device. The voices were more frightened now, speaking in hushed tones about the mysterious human who killed without being seen. Some aliens were demanding to leave the planet immediately. Others wanted to bomb the entire area from orbit, but their commander was keeping them on the ground, trying to hunt Jake down personally. That was good. It meant Jake still had time to finish what he started. Jake packed his gear and moved to his next position. He had mapped out the entire area around the alien landing site, marking every rock formation, every cave, every possible hiding spot. The aliens were searching systematically, but they were searching the wrong places. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters. They could track prey across vast distances, moving continuously for days without stopping. Most alien species evolved differently. They were ambush predators or pack hunters who relied on short bursts of speed and coordinated attacks. In a long chase, humans always won. Jake found his next target 20 minutes later. A group of 5 aliens were investigating one of his old hiding spots, moving carefully but predictably. They stayed together for protection, which made them perfect targets for the surprise he had prepared. Jake triggered the explosive device he had planted earlier. The blast brought down a section of cliff face, burying 3 aliens under tons of rock. The other 2 were thrown clear but badly injured. Jake finished them with precise rifle shots before disappearing back into the rocks. Commander Groktar received the report of 5 more casualties and felt something he had not experienced in many years of warfare. Doubt. His forces were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they could not see, could not catch, and could not predict. Every patrol he sent out resulted in more dead soldiers. Every trap he set was avoided or turned against him. The human was not just a warrior. It was a predator that had made Groktar's entire army into prey. "Sir," his tactical officer spoke, quietly, "perhaps we should withdraw and request orbital bombardment. The human cannot survive if we destroy the entire surface of this region." Groktar considered the suggestion. It would be the smart tactical decision. Retreat, regroup, and eliminate the threat from a safe distance. But it would also mean admitting that a single human had defeated 200 alien warriors. The shame would follow him for the rest of his career. Other species would mock the collective's military might. "No," Groktar decided. "We finish this on the ground. Gather all remaining forces for a final assault. We will search every cave, every crevice, until we find this human." It was exactly the decision Jake had hoped for. Jake watched the aliens form up for their final push through his rifle scope. They were moving in one large group now, all remaining forces concentrated in a single formation. 67 aliens, all the survivors from 7 ships. They advanced slowly and carefully, checking every possible hiding spot. Their formation was tight and disciplined. They covered each other well and moved like professional soldiers. Under normal circumstances, it would have been an effective tactic, but Jake had spent the last 8 hours preparing for exactly this moment. The aliens entered the kill zone at sunset, when the red sky was darkest and shadows were deepest. Jake had chosen the location carefully, a narrow valley with high walls on both sides and only one way in or out. The aliens had to pass through it to reach his last known position. Jake waited until the entire alien force was in the valley before he started the show. The first explosion came from behind them, sealing off their escape route with fallen rocks. The second and third explosions came from the sides, triggering carefully prepared rock slides that filled the air with dust and debris. But Jake was not trying to crush them with rocks this time. He was trying to blind them. In the chaos and dust, Jake moved like a shadow among his enemies. His night vision gave him a huge advantage in the artificial twilight created by the falling debris. The aliens were firing blindly, hitting each other, As often as they hit empty air, Jake's rifle spoke again and again, each shot carefully aimed and precisely placed. Chemical explosive rounds punched through alien armor and dropped warriors with devastating effect. Commander Groktar tried to rally his troops, but his voice was lost in the noise of explosions and weapons fire. He could barely see his own soldiers, through the dust and smoke. Then he saw the human. Jake Martinez emerged from the chaos like a figure from a nightmare. His armor was battered and scarred, his face was covered in dust and alien blood, but his eyes burned with the focused intensity of a perfect predator. Groktar raised his plasma cannon and fired. The energy beam passed through empty air. The human had moved again, flowing around the shot like water around a stone. Jake's return fire took Groktar in the chest, punching through his thick armor and dropping him to his knees. The Vorthak commander looked up at the human standing over him. How? Groktar gasped with his dying breath. How did you defeat so many? Jake looked down at the alien commander without emotion. You made one mistake, he said quietly. You thought this was a fight. What was it then? Groktar asked. A hunt, Jake replied. And humans are the best hunters in the galaxy. Groktar's eyes went dark and he fell forward into the red dust. Jake stood alone in the valley, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. 100 aliens from the first battle, 70 more from the reinforcement fleet. 170 alien warriors total, all dead by his hand. He activated his emergency beacon one more time, but this time he set it to broadcast on human frequencies. Real human frequencies, not the fake signals he had used to confuse the aliens. 3 days later, a human patrol ship picked up his signal and found Jake sitting beside his wrecked scout vessel. He was alive, uninjured, and surrounded by enough alien wreckage to outfit a small army. The rescue crew could barely believe what they found. The battle site looked like a war zone where armies had fought, not the location of a single man's last stand. What happened here? The patrol captain asked as they loaded Jake aboard their ship. Jake looked back at the red planet one last time. Somewhere in the dust and rocks were the bodies of 170 alien warriors who had learned too late that humans were not prey. I sent a message, Jake said simply. What kind of message? Jake smiled grimly as the ship lifted off toward the stars. The kind the galaxy won't forget. And they never did. The Battle of Kepler 442c became legend throughout known space. Military academies studied it. Alien commanders feared it. Human colonists took comfort from it. One human had faced impossible odds and won, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple, terrifying fact that humans never, ever gave up. The galaxy had been reminded why. It was better to have humanity as a friend than an enemy. And Jake Martinez had proven that sometimes one person could make all the difference in the universe.